Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching this from. Welcome to the African Film Festival in conversation with filmmakers. My name is Mojisola Shonoiki. I'm the founder of the African Film and Arts Foundation, and we're the producers of the African Film Festival Atlanta. Today, we have the honor of having the director and the writer of the award-winning film, My Father's Shadow, brothers Akinola Davies Jr. and Wale Davies. Welcome to both of you. Before I go into asking the questions, I want to try and do something that I really haven't done before, but my spirit just drove me to do this. And when I first got onto this video, I asked Akinola if he knew about Orikis. He said he doesn't. I asked Wale if he does. He said he does. So basically, Oriki is a cultural phenomenon amongst our tribe, where all three of us are of the Yoruba tribe of West Africa, where Yoruba speakers use poetic forms to praise people about their achievements in life. So I'm going to try and do, I wish I could do it in Yoruba, I can't, but I'm going to do it in English, and it's just going to be like 30 seconds. So this is an Oriki, a praise song for Akinola. I've put Wale in there a little bit. So let's see how this goes. So, Akinola, brave warrior, one who brings honor and wealth, the child of Akinola Davies Sr. and Madam Davies, a child of Bagada, the younger brother of Grammy-nominated Wale Davies, aka Tech, aka Show Them Camp, writer, poet, rapper extraordinaire. Akinola Davies Jr., writer for the BBC, director of the short film Lizard, which won the Grammy Jury Prize for Shorts at the 2021 Sundance Film Festival, made his feature-length directorial debut with My Father's Shadow. Akinola Davies. His film was the first Nigerian film to make the official selection for Cannes and premiered his debut feature in the Uncertain Regard category, winner of the Camera d'Or Special Mention. Akinola Davies, winner of the British Independent Film Award for Best Director, official UK submission for Best International Feature at the Oscars. You are destined for great things. You have shown that. Akinola Davies Jr., the son of Akinola Davies Sr. I will end it there. I wish I could say in Yoruba, this would sound totally different. And, you know, we would have the music, we would have the drums. Because what we do at the foundation is we're very big on, you know, spreading our culture, showing our culture. I just thought it was appropriate to do a praise song, especially for all the achievements that both of you have received, you know, over the time. So everybody knows you won the BAFTAs, Sundance. We all saw you win all these awards, and we're all very proud of you. So let's go a bit into why we're here. And we're here to talk about the film, My Father's Shadow.
Sometimes it's hard to know what to do. I want to be with you boys and your mother always. But life is not like that. Nigeria is hard.
Are you boys ready?
Yes, Daddy.
You are following me to Lagos today.
Your young men will see visions, your old men shall dream dreams. Repent!
I didn't believe you were going to come, but I knew.
Follow! Follow!
Look at you. I have missed you growing up.
It's the longest bridge in the whole of Africa.
This country is going to change.
Yeah, more
crazy.
The problem with this country is discipline. This is why we need the military.
Capo! You better take these long ones home. The streets are already hot.
Fellow Nigerians, it is in the supreme interest of law and order that the presidential election be annulled.
Everything is sacrifice. You just have to pray you don't sacrifice the wrong thing.
So at film festivals, most people, or going to watch a film generally, most people's first introduction to the film is either through the trailer or the logline or the synopsis. And so the logline for your film, My Father's Shadow, reads Akinola Davies Jr.'s bold and poetic debut follows a father estranged from his young sons over the course of a day in Lagos as political unrest threatens their journey home. So as a Nigerian, when I read this, this story of a father navigating a single day with his sons amid political unrest feels deeply personal and familiar. And if you've ever lived in Nigeria, you've probably witnessed political unrest at some point. And if you've ever lived in Lagos, you know what it means to have, what it means to have a day in Lagos. So this question goes to you first, Akinola. How did you balance this intimate family journey with the broader realities of life in Nigeria? And what did you most want the audience to take away from that moment?
First of all, thank you for having us on the platform. Thank you for this conversation. It's been a big intention of us to have the community the film is made for, have access to the film as a matter of priority. So it's always an honor to be in communion with people from our community across the globe, no matter where they are. So first and foremost, thank you for even creating a platform, first and foremost, way before us. If we're going to do a Ricky's, let's give it back to you. Thank you for creating a platform. Thank you for showing up for your community. Thank you for throwing a festival. Thank you for requesting our film. Thank you for allowing us, the younger generation, to be platformed on your shoulders, on your hard work, in your years of dedication to the craft and to promoting our culture in what is a place, Atlanta, that we as Nigerians hold a big reverence for, beyond having a huge population. There's been so much in our psyche in contemporary history. So first and foremost, I give you an Oriki back.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. I think Wale is probably better equipped to answer the question, but what I will say is, I think a lot of our conversations during the process of making this film was trying to have authentic representations of Nigerians on screen. I think we've seen a lot of depictions of Nigerians from different communities. And as Wale would say, from the opening line, from the opening accent, from the opening dialogue of a character, we realize they've already failed the assignment. I think in Nigeria and Africa is a broad range of people from multiple of ethnicities. But what we hold very high esteem is not only our language, our culture and traditions, but the way we communicate. And because we're Africans, we have a shorthand with being able to identify other dialects, whether we're speaking in English or not. So I think a real intention of ours was to be the authors of our own story, to be able to show you what's of value for us within our own communities, for how we want to tell stories, for how we see ourselves, how we want to be portrayed on screen, because we haven't seen enough, if any, accurate depictions of what it means to be Nigerian, what it means to be a Lagosian, what it means to be a Yoruba person. I think, with good intentions or less good intentions, people have always been able to be the ones offering our stories on a global scale. So what we really wanted to do was set an intention to show the Nigeria, the Lagos we grew up in, the Lagos we know and love, however complicated and flawed it is. We wanted to put that on screen. We shot on 16mm because we think Nigerians deserve to see themselves on the most beautiful format. We believe Lagos deserves to be seen on the most beautiful format. And fundamentally, we believe our cast and crew deserve to see the fruits of their labor also on the most beautiful format. So these are all decisions that are going into making this film that enable us to as director and genius writer, come away with it feeling a sense of pride and ownership in the work we create, and we have a responsibility beyond just being Nigerian, a group of people who when you go to someone's house, you have to greet them, you have to acknowledge where you are, whose presence you are in, which family you're from. Beyond just that, we realize in the stories we tell, these are real human beings, many of which, and especially in our father's shadows, who have sacrificed their lives for the salvation of our people across ethnic tribes, across cultural tribes. People have lost family members in the hope of trying to create a country that we can all be proud of, and hold a position of this African giant, which we've claimed for so long. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but ultimately I think there's a sense of urgency to create authentic Nigerian stories, to give platform to people from different ethnicities to be able to tell their own stories, and to champion our writers, champion our filmmakers, champion our crews, champion Nollywood, champion our actors, yeah, just as much as our music travels around the globe, we want our films to be able to continue to do so as well.
Okay, Wale, do you have any input?
Yes, I think, just to touch on two things. I think the first one is that, we're from Isaleko, and if we ever only get to make one film, I think the idea was to showcase Lagos, first of all, within that film. It's a place we grew up, it's a place we're from, it's a place we're proud of, so ultimately to showcase Lagos in the way and the manner Akin described. I think secondly, I think the second thing was to discuss and speak on fatherhood and the concept of fatherhood. I think a lot of fathers around the world can resonate with the idea of balance, finding the balance to go out and work and earn and do all of that versus your presence in the home with your children and the time that is spent with your children, and figuring out that balance and what that balance involves. But I think especially in a country like Nigeria, that balance is very precarious, right? Because I think if as they call us, the developing world, I think that there's no safety blanket. Like I think in some parts of the world, the government or the institutions would ensure that maybe you collect some kind of monthly allowance or some kind of support. But in Nigeria, we don't have this support. So for somebody who is struggling and trying to make ends meet, it's even more delicate because the idea of not earning a living in some cases can be the difference between life and death. So how do you balance that? Like you have this desire to earn, to take care of your family, to do all of that versus the time spent with your family. And I think this film explores that a lot. I like to say that, there's a lot of people when we have the Q&As, it's okay, so what is the answer? And I say, I don't know the answer. I don't think we'll ever have the answer. But the one thing that I hope the film depicts is that, from the position we're at now, one thing that I think can create more understanding between parents and children is communication. And I think communication is not to be conflated with respect or lack of respect. I think a lot of times in the culture we grew up in, you can't talk to your parents, you can't, because there's a respect factor involved. And I do think that respect factor is critical and important. But I think that the job actually falls on the parents to open the dialogue with the children, and dictates how that dialogue is framed or shaped. And so for me, if there's something I hope people can take from the film is to see that, like our way, and Akin mentioned there's a lot of things we put in the film, how you greet, how you respond to adults, how you I think those are very those are very important things in our culture, and I still believe in the importance of those things, but I also think we need to, as artists and as being blessed to be in this position where our creation is our job. Like, this is actually a job for us to make film, something we dreamt about as children. I think that ultimately for us, we feel more of a responsibility to start conversations, to provoke responses, to provoke people having dialogue. I think the best part of this film so far is the fact that, like, you in Atlanta and us in different parts of the world are having a conversation, and that's what art can do. It can open conversations between people, so we hope that the film creates more conversations, even with people within their own family structure, within their own home. And sometimes I actually even pray, I know it's lofty thinking, but I actually pray that even the people that rule the country, and, hopefully maybe the one day they can get to see it, and maybe it pokes at their conscience or has some questions that they, who knows? Who knows?
Folks at their conscience. Are we asking for too much here?
Maybe, but who knows? I mean, yeah, I think we don't have many opportunities of dialogue, in a non-performative way with our leaders, So if we can use film or art or whatever to have dialogue, then hey, I'm all for it.
Okay, I like the way that you're both unashamedly Nigerian and talk about Lagos, because I spent my formative years in Lagos too, and I have a deep, deep love for Lagos. And last year, 2024 into 2025, I spent 8 months in Lagos. So I lived in Lagos for under a year, and I've been out of Nigeria most of my life. So going back and living in Lagos, I'm just like, wow. The energy of Lagos you have to experience it, really, to be able to talk about it. And I like the fact that, you both tried to bring that into the film. So let's talk about shooting in Lagos. What was that experience like? And there's some scenes, I don't want to give too much away about the film, but there's some, the scene at the beach, the scene in the bus, scene on the motorcycle. Talk to us about shooting in Lagos. Let's start with director Akinola.
Shooting in Lagos is, for me, it represents freedom. It's the place I love filming the most. It's the place I feel most excited, most alive, because I think anything that can happen will happen. And it completely tests your resolve for being able to think quickly and think outside the box and be a lot more dynamic with the way you approach things. But we managed to shoot in Lagos and Ibadan. For My Father's Shadow, we shot what I gather now is a very ambitious shooting schedule across the city. We shot on Third Mainland Bridge. We shot we shot across Lagos Island. We shot a lot in Yaba. We shot really the length and breadth of the city. But Wale and I have been making films in Nigeria for almost about 15 years. He was my first producer in Nigeria. He used to be head of production for an online company back in the day. And he inherited, when that company folded, he inherited a group of very ambitious and curious young men and women who are all very interested in making films. And we sort of brought those people into our filmmaking family, and we've traveled to Zaria, we've traveled to Nsukka, we've traveled to various places with a few of them to make films. And equally, our approach to making films is really governed by Wale and Fumbi, who is our other partner, in terms of working with community. We're not Nigerians who turn up to shoot with armed security. We don't think that is a flex. We don't think that's something that should be promoted. We don't think that's how you engage with the community, because a lot of communities are very suspicious of people coming to extract from their communities. A lot of people who are Nigerians coming to extract from their communities. And what we think is of more important values is, in the same way we have a dialogue, is to have a dialogue with communities so they feel invested in what we're making. You know, there's many ladies who, maybe many aunties who run bookers who can cater for a production. You know, from My Father's Shadow, in the first week, we tried to have all these European salads and foods, and the crew were not having it. You know, they wanted their poundo and their eba, and you know, so we hired local crew to make food in the same way. You go to someone's house and you greet. When you go to an area of Lagos, you have to engage with the police, the army, the local government, the head of the area boys, the community watch group, all sorts of things. And because you have to break bread with all these people, our culture is patronage. Our culture is just showing respect when you come into territories. And this is the same layer and metric you have to create when shooting in Nigeria, because ultimately a lot of people think shooting in Nigeria equals cheap labor and a capitalistic exploitation of local labor, and we refuse that. We think you should pay people a fair wage in comparison to what you're paying people in the UK and in the US. We think people should have an equity in the film that they're making. We feel people should have a voice in able to even have a say in correcting us when we depict them in the wrong way. So we can have them feeling like they have an opportunity to contribute to the film. So the film is, I direct the film, but it's really directed by committee. It's really directed by everyone in our community, because we feel this is the level of work it takes to really decolonize a lot of ideas that we've had thrust upon us in regards to who we are as a people and how we deal with our community and our people. It's not easy work by any shade of the imagination, but it's a lifelong work, and that level of commitment is what is necessary to return a sense of dignity and the salvation of the people who we care the most about. So I say all that to say it's been a long road. It's about 15 years to get to this point, but we realize that working with grassroots community and taking resources back from the UK to pour into Nigeria enables us to bring many people into our orbit, and those people protect us. They give us they realize that we're telling a story, and they give us a lot more access to be able to tell a film as layered and as dense as My Father's Shadow.
Okay, and Wale, your experience?
Yeah, so I think my experience, a lot of people say shooting in Lagos is difficult, and there are difficulties. I think most of the difficulties are around infrastructure. You know, I think that, like, you know, kudos to a lot of our team, you know, costume, set design, they have to go and source these things. We don't have, you know, we don't have houses where you can go and pull, you know, old TVs and prop houses. We don't have prop houses. We don't have all those things. So you have to go and source everything, you know, and then making a film that is set in 1993, you know, it comes with its own challenges. There's no mobile phones. You have to make sure how you shoot, you know, like we frame it in 1993 down to the details of license plates on cars, to the money that is being used, to all of these different little details. And kudos to our various heads of department, because they really delved into the task, right? I think that the easy part to me, which is what a lot of people, weirdly enough, find as the most difficult part, is dealing with people in Lagos. And I think, like Akin said, it's understanding people. Before I go into an area, having shot in Lagos for so many years, I know that months before we even go and shoot there, I've gone into the area, I've sensitized the people, I found out who is the person in charge, even the person in charge may have somebody else in charge above him. So you have to find the real, in Nigeria, they say king of boys. You know, you find who is the person there. You have a conversation with him. You know, a lot of people say, oh, Lagosians are very hostile. When you bring out a camera, they ask for money and all of those things. I think they're tired of being exploited, you know, and they feel like you're going to go and make big money with whatever you're filming me for, and I'm not going to receive anything from that, you know. So I think the way to clear all of that is to actually go in and figure out a way to, first of all, sensitize the community, but also in a lot of ways, like Akin said, utilize the community as well. Our first layer of protection on any set is the people in that area. you know, like,
Yes.
because they know the area, they know when something is off, they know the policeman that patrols that area, they know everything going on, they know who the, you know, so even if people show up and they want to demonstrate, they can also speak to those people and say, no, in Yoruba, they know, we know who they are, we know where they're
They've been
we
spoken
know where
to.
they exactly. So I think that, like, once you understand the modalities of shooting in Lagos and what it mitigates a whole lot of problems. You know, I think figuring out the infrastructure side of it, I think, is where the real challenge in Nigerian filmmaking comes, because I think that, you know, everybody, I'm also involved in the music world. I think, you know, it's very we can't allow it to be like oil or raw materials where it's a purely extractive situation, but we don't invest in any infrastructure on ground to support things. You know, we need more studios, we need more production houses, we need more film lots where people can come and like create and work. And that's actually what will stimulate the younger generation of filmmakers, because they have access to facilities. You know, you can't just be an island. Film is the most is not the type of career where I can want to be a filmmaker all my life, but until I find the right people and the right resources and the right infrastructure, it would be a Herculean task, as they say. You know, so I do feel like that's where the challenge comes in. You know, like, how do we support on an infrastructure level? You know, how do we, you know, so for us, yes, filming in Lagos, I would say filming this film was probably the most difficult thing I've ever undertaken in my life, project-wise. Because I worked on the production side of it, aside from the writing. And our
Okay.
job, our mandate is to ensure that the director has as clear a pathway to just direct the film. So he's not thinking of other problems. So we are troubleshooting the problems in real time as they happen, you know. But I find that the biggest problems are problems around infrastructure and facility. Where do we house the crew? Where are they going to stay? Somebody's coming from, we have to make sure we house the crew, because somebody might be coming from Yanokbaja, and that's like 2 hour traffic may catch him, so he may not get to set on time. You know, there are little things like that that, you know, you have to mitigate for, and you almost have to create the solution for, you know. You know, but I think that, like Akin said, the best thing is that we've been facing these things for years, so we kind of have an idea of how to solve for a lot of the challenges that may come up.
Okay, so can you just give us maybe one instance of a challenge you encountered whilst you were shooting, or something unexpected that happened that actually surprised you, pleasantly surprised you?
Yeah, I'll go first. Maybe
Yeah,
like me.
please.
Yeah, I'll go first. I think that, you know, one of the days we shot in Lagos Island, you know, I feel that, like, you know, there was moments where, for me, the people that you know, I would say the residents of Lagos Island, but there are people that people would call area boys, you know,
Area boys.
yeah, like how they, you know, really got involved in the film. There's a scene with a character that is depicting an area boy, you know, and all of them are on the side watching and say, no, we don't do it like this. You know, like they were really, because they were seeing themselves being portrayed on
Being
camera.
portrayed.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so they wanted it to also be as authentic as possible, you know. So they were contributing, and, you know, they would even come out, have a suggestion, you know, like, you know. And it's interesting to see that, like, you know, because you almost see like a childlike fascination in their eyes, you know. And these are people that society has portrayed in a negative way, but I think it's really just like a lack of opportunities. You know, once you give people the
Of
opportunity,
course.
once you empower people to feel a part of something, they really championed us, they really like supported us, they were really involved in the film, you know. And so for me, that was really surprising, because I feel like I filmed in Lagos many times, but I think for them as well, you know, the fact that we shot in that area over a few days. So maybe day one, they're a bit skeptical. Day two, they're a bit skeptical. But by day three, day four, they're okay, these people are coming back every day. They're involved. We set up a place where people can go, and we made food where people can go and be collecting food. I think, like, you know, there's something Aki mentions a lot of times in interviews, that when you give people an honest wage and you provide, meal food, like 3 square meals, whether for cast and crew or even like just extras around, you'll be surprised how much, people go the extra mile for you, and that to me was very surprising to witness and see in real time.
Akinola?
Mine is slightly different. I think so. The question was like something that surprised us.
Pleasantly surprised you.
Pleasantly surprised. Yeah, I think it was just how people, give Wale his flowers. I think it's just how people responded to the script. I think, the script is always the calling card for what the intention of what we're trying to do is. And we had the real fortune of working with Mr. Shola Lijadu. And we did a table read with the whole crew. And after the table read, he comes to us and he's like, I really love the script. I've been working in Nigeria for almost 30 or 3 or 4 decades, and I've never read a script as good as this before.
Oh,
nice. And he really loves what we're trying to do, but he was like, he thinks his character should sing a song. And, we're like, oh God, here we go. What is this going to be? And he sings the song that he ends up singing in the film, and both our producers started crying when he was singing it. So at that point, we realized, we have to try and include the song in the film. And it's that level of people feeling that there's a place for their voice to be heard. There's a place for their ideas to be welcome. There's a place for how they interpret the story to equally be put into the film. I think it was a pleasant surprise because subsequently the film is the Lijadu sisters who we revere and we love, and he's their younger brother. And I ended up writing a letter to Miss Lijadu, and she graciously allowed us to use the song in the film and in the credits as well. So it was a very circular moment, which I think is really a testament to how incredible, creative and sort of off the cuff Nigerians can be, because that he felt something in the moment, and he felt safe enough to tell us, and we held that and we did our best to try and honor what he felt, for sure.
Okay, that was a surprise to hear the Lijadu sisters. Oh, okay, because I know them quite well. So you spoke to Auntie Taye?
Yes, Auntie Taye, yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, it's a small world. Okay, so let's quickly talk about of course, we have to talk about the cast. There's a lot of talent in Nigeria, and I wasn't really surprised about the performance of the young boys in Nigeria, because I've done, I'm a filmmaker myself. My brother's a filmmaker in Nigeria. I've worked with people in Nigeria, and I see the talent. You can walk outside and see the talent. So talk to us about the process of how you got those young boys, how you got the lead, and how you got the rest of the cast.
Sure. Well, our cast, the rest of the cast is completely stacked. We have an incredible array of talent who are leads in their own right across Nollywood films. It's a prerequisite that everybody has to audition, which is a turn-off to some people, which we completely understand because of their stature within the community in Nollywood, and we completely understand. We don't intend to cause any offense, but Shokwe had to audition for the film. Everybody has to audition for the film, because at some point there's some situations where somebody will come and read for a character, and we realize you're actually a different character. And if we don't get to see that in person, then it's something that we're not able to always sort of advocate for. So yeah, we worked with incredible casting agents, Shaheen Beg and Kemi Lala, who also
I know Kemi Lala.
Kemi also cast Lizard for us, our short film that we made in Nigeria. And she also has a network of incredible talent that also supply names and casting for us as well. And that same group worked with Shaheen Beg, who's Emmy Award winning. She won an Emmy for Adolescence recently. And she helped put together a structure of how we would go around finding the brothers, because we went to boarding schools, we went to churches, we went to community centers, we went to art groups. We received casting tapes from people in the industry. And ultimately we collated, I went to Lagos, I went to Ibadan, I went to a bunch of places to meet children and watched a lot of tapes. And ultimately this was filtered down to a group who I met in like October 23 or November 23. And then we came back in just before prep, and we decided to host a 2-day workshop, which is based around play. I'd done an acting workshop in England with a lady called Miss Evelyn Dua, who's of Ghanaian descent, but has taught a lot of young Black actors in the UK, Daniel Kaluuya and such. And she basically came to Nigeria to host this workshop. Shaheen, our casting agent, was there. Kemi Lala was there. All of us were there. Miwale Fumbi were there. Cinematographer was there because we were in the throes of prepping. And we had a whole bunch of kids come, maybe about 20 in number across 2 days. And on the first day, we did the workshops with the kids, and then we lost maybe half of the number. But in that first day, I saw 2 kids being very tactile with each other. I didn't realize they were brothers. I thought maybe they'd become friends with this workshop. They were labeled, one was labeled Egbo Godwin, and the other one was labeled Marvelous Egbo. So I was like, okay, they're obviously different. They're obviously 2 different boys. And then, they came back the next day and their names were labeled properly. They were both Egbos and they were both real brothers. And I remember when our other producer, Fumbi, realized this, you could hear like the internal scream in her head of how excited she was that a film about brothers. We have 2 brothers here who are on the final day of our casting before we pick. I have to give a big shout out to Miss Egbo, their mother, who's a script writer and who's an actor in her own right, because the boys were able to retain dialogue more than a lot of other kids. A lot of other kids had like incredible character and charisma, but the brothers stood head and shoulders in a way that even me, I wasn't able to pick up on straight away. I was a bit cautious of 2 first-time actors being on screen. We're shooting on film, we don't have the opportunity to do multiple takes and stuff, but the crew saw it before I saw it. I did see it, but I was more skeptical of them being able to last the duration of the production. So I was leaning towards kids who had been on films before and been on productions before, because they have an understanding of like a professional attitude. But the crew basically vetoed all my decisions. They took me to a corner and were like, look, you have to pick these boys. There's no way about it. You have to pick them and you have to get a performance out of them. And I'm glad they vetoed me, because I think those boys, Marvelous and Godwin, was really a divine moment, being like, here is what you need. Here are 2 people who are going to deliver on what we all need together. You just have to have faith in them being able to do so. And I'm glad that the people, the crew, the collective, were able to hold my feet to the fire and hold our feet to the fire in terms of those boys. And we get to see the performances they give. In terms of Shokbe,
yes.
We'd made a very long list. Me and Wale, for almost 6 months, going back and forth on lists. People from America, people from the UK, people from Nigeria. Some people, again, just criteria. Some people had the stature, but we had never seen the soft performance. Some people had the soft performance, but we'd never seen the stature. Some people were a bit older. Some people we'd seen before and are always typecast in this role. So we wanted to work with someone who gave a fresh perspective, who's a younger profile, a younger actor, who has the stature and who has the range, and who also was looking for a sense of belonging, in being of Nigerian descent and being in the diaspora, and wanting to reconnect with his own roots as well. And that's Sope Dirisu, somebody who I think is just the best actor going. I'm obviously biased, but I believe Sope is completely incredible. I think he's such a compassionate, empathetic person. He was a real father to the boys on and off the screen. He took Yoruba lessons. He took Pidgin lessons. He was policed by everyone on set when he would get anything wrong, but he was so generous with his time with all the actors. I always think a big actor, he's just going to be in his trailer and he's going to come out and perform when he needs to and go back. But first of all, we didn't even have a trailer for him, so he just had to be on set the whole time anyway. But I'm just so grateful for him, because I think he's always been in roles that, show his physique and the physicality of what he can do. But he'd been in another film called His House, where I'd seen the softness in his performance. And again, he really wanted to make work in Nigeria and have that connection with the creative community. So he was someone who, as soon as we saw, we knew he could be right, and then he auditioned, and then we hung out, and we knew he was perfect for it.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about the story. We've talked a little bit about the cast. So the name of the film, My Father's Shadow. How did that come about? Why not something else? My Father's Reflection, My Father's something else, My Father's Shadow. How did that name come about? Was it in the? Yeah, talk to us about that. Wale,
That's you, Wale.
Yeah, let's go with Wale.
Yeah. I mean, the honest answer is that, like, I think initially I wanted to call it something else.
Which was
which was actually Red Clay Road, strangely enough, because I think, like, when I, for the story, before I even started writing the story, I think the first thing I saw in my head was the end of the film, right? And there's a scene, obviously people haven't watched it, so I'm not going to spoil the film, but I think that there is a scene at the end. I just saw this really beautiful blue Adire fabric and people walking on this red clay road, and like how it is in the village where the roads are untarred and red, and the contrast between that blue and the road, and that end scene was meant to be this group of people walking down, and that was the first thing I saw. And so when I try and write, I try and really like see and put myself inside the writing, and I see a lot of like images as I'm writing. And so for me, like, but I think why My Father's Shadow is, I think in a lot of ways, growing up, my father, who was, late pretty early in our childhood, I'd say, at the time I would have been 4 going on 5. Aki would have been going on 2. But all through growing up, I would hear from people about the amazing things he did, like I would hear, and it almost felt like, almost everything that, like you would go into, for example, even when I went into music, and my mother would tell me, oh, your father used to work with King Sunny Ade. He even has a song, Road Publicity. He has a song, Road Publicity, that he sang about my father and his partners and their publicity company, because they were working with King Sunny Ade, or he would work in Motown with, selling Motown records in Nigeria at the time. So it was a distributor, a rep for them, So hearing all these things, and even just hearing from friends and people, like most of the images and perception and view and the perspective I have of my father are from stories that other people told me, how he was growing up in school, how they would play in school, and how, so they played against King's College, or they went to Methodist Boys. The people from his school years would tell me stories. People from his work years would tell me stories. People from his family would tell me stories. But very much like, I feel that, like, from all of the stories, it felt very much like this was somebody who was a force in his own right. He was somebody who also cared about his community, about his people, carried people along. So all of them, whenever they would talk, they would say, Brother Akin, he used to do this, he used to do that. They would always tell us a lot of stories about him. So I think in us exploring him, exploring his absence, exploring his personality, exploring all of those things in the writing of the film, and also in a lot of ways exploring like some of the some of the emotions that as children we felt growing up without his presence. I think that it's really about this shadow that he cast over us, and paying homage to that. Also sometimes you would say, I said recently, like shadows are a reflection of light. You need light to cast the shadow. So the light that he has, I guess, like placed on us, given us, with our mother, our family, our history, our ancestry, our heritage, our dreams, our visions, like our culture, our tradition. There's so many things that he has, passed down to us. And so for us, I eventually agreed and felt like, so in the whole process of writing, my father's shadow was, I would always put working title, but at a point as the film emerged and evolved, I actually think, wow, no, this is actually the title. This is what, is befitting. So yeah.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap up shortly, but there's no way I'm going to talk to you, Wale, without me talking about your music. Show Them Camp. I'm a big fan of Show Them Camp. And then online, your bio mentions that you're also Grammy nominated. So talk to us quickly about your music, Show Them Camp. Show Them Camp, for me, the reason why I love everything about what you're doing with Show Them Camp, from the name, that name, when I came across that name, I was like, wow. I mean, I felt that name. The name, the style of music, because I grew up in the era of high life where you go to parties, you hear hard life. So Independent Ladies was on repeat for me for a long time because it took me back to my days of going to high life parties, listening to high life and Fela and all of that. So please talk to us about your music and how the Grammy nominated part comes in with your name.
For sure. So I think that like music and film, there's actually a perfect synergy on both things.
Yes.
I think that like growing up, like I was a big fan of hip hop music, and a lot of the hip hop music I would listen to at the time, one of the things they were very proud of and they did very well is that they would talk about where they are from. So even before I had been to America, I knew of like Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and Marcy projects and Queens Bridge projects and Compton, College Park and Compton and Inglewood and all this Long Beach, places I'd never been to. And like I didn't even realize at those times growing up that a lot of those places were where the Black communities were pushed into in different states in the US, right? I remember going to New York and saying, I want to go to Bed-Stuy, I want to go and check it out, and I got there and I realized I'm in the hood, but but what had, I think what had happened, what I feel really strongly hip hop did, they also told us about culture, we're taught about Timberland and all these different, products and things that they pushed onto us, right? And so when it got to the opportunity to make music, one of the decisions we made very early and is that, and also something else happening in living in diaspora. At a certain point, it wasn't cool to be Africans, like living in the UK. It wasn't cool to be Africans at all. So when I moved back to Nigeria and I saw amazing artists like D'banj, Two-Face, Sound Sultan, people like that making music in Nigeria, and they were proudly Nigerian, I said, okay, if we're going into music as living here in Nigeria now, one of the things we want to do is also project images of our culture, of where we're from, of our sound, of our, so why we call our project Palm Wine Music is actually paying homage to things that, traditionally people would sit under the tree and drink palm wine and share stories and dance and listen to music. So for us, it was very important to share our culture to the world. So the same way they gave us Inglewood and Bed-Stuy, we're also telling them about Nigeria, about Africa, about the type of music, about high life, about, so we actually picked palm wine because we did a lot of research into the genre of music. We've gone research into Akbala music, into palm wine, and so for us is to champion being proud of being Africans, being proud of being Nigerians, being proud of where you're from, because I think that reclaiming of your identity is very important for us as Nigerians, Africans, and as Black people in general in how we move forward in the coming century, So for us, I just feel like art and being an artist gives us that opportunity to do that, And so for me, music has always been the tool. But then I realized from doing music, I would shoot music videos for Show Them Camp, and then I would start shooting music videos for other people. And then I realized how important the visual accompaniment to the music was. And that also then pushed me into my love for film and visuals. One other thing that we do with Show Them Camp is that the reason why we call it camp is that we believe that it's not just about the individual, it's about the community, it's about, so we've been championing a lot of artists, and one of them, a young artist that I manage, Thames, has come from that Show Them Camp, like from the camp, I would say, for lack of a better
From the
word.
camp.
And she then, in the process of us working together, she then has won 2 Grammys. So for me, I look at, again, I think it mentions this thing about time being, in our culture, time is not linear, it's circular. You pay homage to your ancestors, you pay homage to the future and the present as well. And I think that, like, she being the one to win the Grammy, for me, it's also still paying homage to the Two Faces and the D'banj and the people that laid the foundation, and even before them, the Fela Kuti, Jimmy Solanke, all of these people that paved the way for all of us to even be here and be creating music. Your King Sunny days now. So that's why, even in the, it's such a circular thing, because we were able to pay homage to the Lijadu sisters, like Akin said. I also want to make a correction that
that's wonderful.
Their brother's name is Ayo Lijadu, but we put in some Show Them Camp music subtly into the film as well. So all of these worlds and all of these things connect in a very beautiful circular way, actually. So yeah.
I could sit down here and talk to you two, for the next hour. But let me just kind of wrap up with the last 2 questions. There's no way I'm going to be talking to both of you and not bring up Nollywood. Nollywood is the name given to the Nigerian film industry. What are your thoughts on the name, and do you consider yourself Nollywood filmmakers?
You want to go first? I can go.
No, yeah, I can go first. What are my thoughts on Nollywood, and do we consider ourselves Nollywood filmmakers?
Yes. Your thoughts on the name Nollywood, because do you know the origin of the name, how it came about?
No, but you can tell us.
From my understanding, it was a journalist that was writing an article, I think about Kunle Afolayan, I think, or just about the Nigerian film industry generally. And he, from Hollywood, Bollywood, he came up with Nollywood.
I mean, I think it's I think Nigerian cinema predates Nollywood. Let's put that on the ground first. There's incredible filmmakers who, as part of the independence movement, were creating incredible works, such not only filmmakers but authors and singers and writers in many different forms. There's a sense of self-determination and national identity and expression. I think I'm proud of Nollywood. I think the name has given us an opportunity to inject ourselves in a global consciousness because of a play on the Hollywood name, because the Indians saw fit to go with Bollywood, and we have arguably the 2nd largest film industry in the world, depending on who you talk to. So Nollywood is probably fitting, and I think ultimately Nollywood is even more fitting because it gave Nigerians, a creative community of Nigerians in the 90s, an opportunity to dream beyond their borders, to dream beyond military dictatorship, to dream beyond what their existence was, and to put their own ideas on VHS camcorders and start distributing tapes amongst their friends and amongst their community, something which has since erupted to the whole of Africa. The whole of Africa talks about Nollywood, So what I think about Nollywood is I love how Nollywood is Nigerian-centric and focused first, because I think it allows Nollywood to develop a personality. It allows Nollywood to develop themes and ideas and even a way of acting and performance that is different to Bollywood, that is different to Hollywood. Maybe if you are only fed on a Hollywood diet, you believe that the performances in Nollywood are not to a Hollywood standard. And that's fair if that's the only diet you've ever consumed, because the Indians in Bollywood, they're not really complaining about any of that. They embrace how they perform their films. They embrace their musicals. They're unapologetic about that. In fact, so much so that it's a massive industry that they love. So I'm very proud of Nollywood, because I think something that is self-serving Nigerians first and foremost is something that is extremely valuable and important, because it allows us to nurture something on our own rules, on our own, for us, basically. Do I believe we're Nollywood filmmakers? 110%. I believe we're
wow.
filmmakers.
Do you know how many people say no to that?
Well, I mean, to each his own, like I say, but I can't talk about Nollywood with such reverence and in the next breath be like, I'm not a Nollywood filmmaker. One of the first films I ever saw being made was a Nollywood film, and Wale has referenced this as our late Uncle Kofo, who was making a Nollywood film in our house when he was supposed to be babysitting us when our mom was out of town. All these people turned up to our house with lights and making the script as they go along. And I don't remember it as vividly as probably Wale does, but I do remember it. I remember it happening. They shot in our living room downstairs, and it was just a cacophony of people, basically. And our uncle, bless him, he was one of the first creative people we ever met. He was always treated as the black sheep of the family, a bit quirky, a bit weird. He partied with all these weird creative people, but come to think of it, that's a reflection of our lives now. That's what we do all the time. So he was one of the first people who planted a flag down in the sand for Nollywood. So yes, I believe I'm a Nollywood filmmaker, and proudly so. I believe filmmakers such as myself who have the privilege of dual nationality, it's a responsibility to shed a light on Nollywood. It's a responsibility to build a bridge with Nollywood. It's a responsibility to bring resources home from the UK or the States, to be able to empower the artists in Nigeria who have been working with very little resources for a long period of time to prop up an industry that is now a flourishing industry. Some of these artists are people we grew up on TV, on NTA, on AIT, on channels, television, and they were making films and trailers and things that we were excited about watching. Fundamentally, the last thing I'll say is a lot of the crew in our film work in Nollywood. That's where they learn their trade. A lot of the cast in our film work in Nollywood. Favor, our makeup person, she works in Nollywood. Idris, our gaffer, works in Nollywood. All these people are part and parcel of an industry that they've learned their craft in. So it'd be completely disingenuous for me, of an Ajabota privileged life in the UK to now say I'm not Nollywood, to now say what I'm doing is a higher form of art. No, our film is grounded in Nollywood. It's an extension and evolution of Nollywood. It's in dialogue with Nollywood, and it's proudly a younger brother of Nollywood. Like we don't put ourselves above Nollywood. We are honored to be a part of it, and honored to be considered ambassadors for Nollywood, because we want people to bring resources home so the crew in Nigeria can see themselves as artists as well.
Yeah.
Oh wow, you floored me, Wale.
Yeah.
Yes,
I'm just going to add a few things to that. I think that everything that you're seeing now, this current iteration of like Nigerian creativity, so from music to everything, was actually birthed from Nollywood. And that's what I'll start with. Our last album, I showed them quick plug, is called Africa Magic. And it's very, very intentional, because the first people that we saw who took this independent route, and became African stars are your Genevieve Najis, are your Motolas, are your Ramsey Noahs, are your RMDs. Those are all the people those are all the people that like became household names independently. There was no big machine behind them. It was just young filmmakers coming to. I don't know how many times I would always say Azeb Ejiro, and then we grew up in a time where you know, like we didn't have access to internet and all these things. So what we are watching when we come home from school, we're watching Checkmates, we're watching The Rich Also Cry, we're going to the video club and we're borrowing films to watch and things. So that culture, you know, first of all, allowed people don't realize what seeing yourself as a star does to the mind of a young person. It makes you believe that it is possible. You know, it makes you believe that it is possible. So now you've seen these film stars, you know, come out and become household names, not just in Nigeria. I remember going to the Caribbean for the first time, and they're telling me, you know, Nollywood, man, you people do, you know, watch your films, you know, and so somehow these films have infiltrated popular culture, popular diaspora culture, popular African culture as well, you know. And so for us in music, we're just an extension of that. Then, you know, then you have the music versions of that, the Burna Boys, the Wizkids, and all those people that have also gone out and infiltrated popular culture. For me, I think it's super important to say that, you know, the time of being shy about being African, the time of being shy about being Nigerian, the time of shy about being Yoruba is over. They need to understand it. They need to know it. I'm also not making, you know, I'm very, very grateful for all of the awards and everything that we've achieved with this film. But for me, if we showed that film in Lagos and Nigerians watched the film and they said, we don't recognize these characters on the, you know, like, to me, that would have been a failure. So to me, my biggest award is people watching the film, people taking their fathers to go and watch the film, people telling me from an older generation that it's the first time we've seen June 12 and the things we went through. I remember putting leaves on my car. People come and tell me that this film gives me a memory of my father and the time we spent in Lagos. I haven't been to Lagos for 15 years. You know, like, you know, people's memories are triggered and are recalled from watching the film. People tell me they've spoken to their somebody in Canada came to me after the film and said, I just called my father and I haven't spoken to that man in 3 years. But after I saw the film, I realized that he's a human being. You know, like, for all his mistakes and everything, he's a human being. So I reached out to him for us to talk, you know, and things like that touch me more than any award, because it's work that, for me, the purpose of the work, the opportunity, as we've been placed in this position, is to make work that sparks something in, first of all, in the people that it is made for. Then the outside, and that's another thing that we took from Nollywood, because they were making films for Nigerians.
For Nigerians,
the rest of it, the outside thing that came from it, was as a result of making films for Nigerians. And I think if there's two things I would say that I think, you know, I would hope to contribute to Nollywood, is that we need to go back to making films for Nigerians. Yes, the big Netflixes and the big outside, you know, they want foreign things or whatever. I think if we continue making films for ourselves, with taking global perspective on how films are made, sure. But I think if we continue making films for ourselves, I think that there'll be a lot more artistic merit that will come out of the film. And then I think the second thing that we also have to do, and that we would love to contribute towards Nollywood, is the fact, like Akin said, the people that work in these different roles and different departments are not workers, they are artists. They are artists. Makeup is an art. Being a makeup artist on set is an art. You're not a style, you're a costume, you do costume for film. That's an art. The lighting person, that's an art. You know, so we can't just look at, you know, and I think that's one orientation that we need to shift in Nollywood, is that we need to treat our cast and crew as artists. We need to pay them for their time. We need to pay them for overtime. We need to ensure that we treat them and we feed them well. You know, we need to. I feel that a lot of this idea of like top-down hierarchies is a Western construct. We need to figure out a way where if the food I'm eating is the same food that the cast is and crew are eating. Not that the director and the people will sit like the big men and eat this food and then give everybody else this other food. No, like I think that like we have to think of our own idea of what film can be. Make it a flat structure where, yes, there are people that give within their roles. I can give you instruction based on my role, but I'm not using my role to lord over everybody else. And I think that's the slight orientation I think we need to have, to build a different kind of industry. So that's where I'll end it.
Oh, well, I want to continue, but we have to wrap up. So just one last thing, words of
Sure.
advice for upcoming creatives. Akinola, go first, Wale, and then we'll wrap up.
Words of advice, I would say work with people who give you time, work with people on a horizontal level. Don't always attempt to work with the person ahead of you, because the people on the same level as you are the people who are going to be the movers and shakers in the industry in years to come. And how you treat those people now is going to be a reflection of how they treat you and how the next generation treat each other. So start developing good habits and work with people who are on the same level as you, because the people ahead of you, they're working with the people on the same level and they're busy. We can't always break the next group, but we will try when we can. But it's in order for people on the same level horizontally to build community and continue to work with each other. And I'll probably say that just on a personal note, it's very important for the next generation to start archiving their culture through film, through music, through archiving itself. Because as we started off the call, you taught me something at the beginning of the call, and it's quite emotional in me sometimes not to be able to speak Yoruba. I understand it, but I think if for example we don't archive it in the films we're making, then in years to come you're going to have generations and generations of people who are so alienated from their own culture and their own language. So I think we have these cell phones. A lot of what these cell phones are come out of the soil in Africa. So you have a piece of Africa that enables you to film a bit of Africa. So let's start using these instruments to document ourselves, to document our grandparents, the stories, the songs they sing, the how they weave hair, how they weave clothes, how they make food, the family recipes. All these things, I think, are things we need to protect and start archiving with a sense of urgency. We need to start doing it yesterday. So I encourage people, young filmmakers, documentary filmmakers, feature filmmakers, to put these things in their films so we can continue to see ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, from a writing perspective, I would say it's important to write stories that you know. I think that I think for me, like, so I was speaking to somebody the other day and they were saying about how, man, Nigerians, man, you guys everywhere in the US, everywhere I go, Nigerians are so academic, so, high achievers, all of that. Somebody needs to tell a story about that. And I was like, actually, somebody does need to tell a story about that, because it's not normal for a group of people to be so, like, and I think that, like,
people.
Yes, and I think that it's important that we tell stories that we know, like, because we are missing some obvious stories that we can tell, because we are looking at Western stories that potentially we can tell. And I think that, like, the diaspora story still needs to be told in a very real way. It's not just about, people who tell me, oh, we should write a film about scammers. And I'm like, I'm not interested in doing that, because that's a small percentage, a very small percentage of the Nigerians that I know that are doctors, accountants, lawyers, and are doing remarkable things. So why would I focus on the smallest percentage? I want to tell a story about the bigger percentage that are more recognizable to people. So for me, it's like, how do we start telling stories we know? How do we start looking left, looking right, and seeing that all these things that we take for granted, our culture, I remember once that, there's a music video Akin did that, it shows like a Yoruba party wedding in the diaspora. Even that in itself is a story.
It's a story.
It's different from it's a different from the big and grandiose as it would be in Nigeria. But it also, there's a thing. How did those weddings come about in the diaspora? How did this uncle drive from Philadelphia? This person drove from here to make this particular thing. These are all beautiful stories that nobody is telling, and so for me, I think it's important that, like, the best story, the best perspective is ourselves and what we are, like, our lives, our families, our histories. And I think as well, more recently for me, I also think is also tapping into your emotions and your vulnerability within the stories that you're telling as well. I think that would add layers and nuance and characters to the, because we go through so much in day-to-day lives. And I think it's important that we put a lot of that in our stories. So if I was to give any advice, write stories, and allow yourself to be vulnerable when you write those stories.
Allow yourself to be vulnerable when you write those stories. Wale Davies, Akinola Davies, the sons of Akinola Davies Sr., we thank you very much. My Father's Shadow will be premiered in Atlanta, March 20th at Tara Cinemas. The African Film Festival Atlanta is giving away 30 tickets. Follow us on social media at African Film Fest ATL to try and get a ticket or buy a ticket. Thank you so much again. I'm really, really happy that we were able to do this. I know we're all on different time zones. Enjoy the rest of your day. I thank Mubi as well for giving us this opportunity to be able to speak to both of you, and see you at one of our festivals soon in the near future.
Thank you so
very
much.
much. It's a real
Enjoy the rest of your
privilege.
day.
Just to add before you cut us off, before we all have to
I
go,
don't want to, but we have
I know,
to.
but let me just add real quick. I just really want to say thank you for having us. Platforms like yours are the lifeblood of independent filmmakers like
Thank
us.
you.
I think whether or not people choose to accept it or not, Mubi is a big supporter of independent films. So I think it's important for them to also support the grassroots platforms. And we always say that, listen, our film is a small film by any metric in terms of films that we're up against in cinemas. So we really encourage our community to support the platforms that profile that put our films up. You guys are giving away tickets. That's incredible for us. We know 20 people are going to get to see this film. Even the conversation that we're having is extremely important to be able to give a lot more context to why we make films. But more importantly is the people who get to see the films are the biggest marketing tool we have, because our communities are such that we go and watch things and experiences based on a lot of word of mouth. So we encourage people who see the film, if they like the film, if they enjoy what they hear, if they want to see more of the film, to talk about the film, to write reviews of the film, to take their family, their parents, their friends to go and see the film again. Because what that shows is how valuable a platform like yours is. It shows the movies and the bigger studio companies that our stories travel, that people go and watch these films, and it makes it easier for the next generation of filmmakers. We need more Black female filmmakers. We need more Nigerian female filmmakers. We need more filmmakers from different orientations within our community. So we're just really encourage the audience that in a capitalistic world is the money and the ticket sales that make the difference. And obviously it does a lot for our reputation and our film, but it really sets a precedence for future filmmakers. So we just encourage people to use their voice, whatever size or platform they have, to tell their colleagues, whether Nigerian or non-Nigerian, to come and see what we're really like. So again, we thank you for this opportunity to speak to you.
Block it. Is that the right way of using that? Is that the right way? Thank you so much. And I know I'll be speaking to you again. Okay.
Yes.
Sure. All right.
Yes. All right. Take care. Bye.
Okay.
Take it easy.
All right. Bye.
Bye.